One of the most powerful ways of encountering God is through music. Stay tuned. We're going to encounter God through not just music, but jazz. Hi, I'm Father Mike Manning. I'm coming to you with the desire for you to be able to know that God is alive in your life and moving in ways that perhaps you don't understand. I'm hoping that the love and the care that you hear from this program will reach into you if maybe there's a lonely spot or a dark spot, to know that God really loves you. One of the things that I love about God is that He's filled with creativity. He's coming at us with mountains, He's coming at us with an ocean, He's coming at us with depths of things we hadn't imagined. But one of the things we maybe can easily forget about God is the beautiful gift of music. That music is a way of Him telling us how much He loves us and for us to be able to express how much we love God in return. I'm honored to have with us Father Norm. God bless you. Thank you so much for coming and being with us.
Thank you.
You're a man who, Episcopal priest who has given yourself to God, but you have a resume that kind of overwhelms us with Carnegie Hall and with big concerts and even a connection with Barbara Streisand and some of the things that she's done in big ways. And also you've taken your priesthood and you'd have allowed it to be a means of expressing love through your gift of music. You know? And so Norm, I thank you very much for coming and being with us. And I want to discover a little bit more, if you can give us the insights into how important is music in our relationship with God.
Well, I was very blessed. I might be one of the luckiest kids to graduate high school and go right into the Juilliard School.
When you say Juilliard, that means top notch. I mean, that's it, huh?
It was quite a door opening at the time. And I studied with a man whose name was Saul Goodman. And Mr. Goodman would challenge his students to reach down inside them and find something that could fuel their performance. And it was something beyond technique. It was a life force. It was an energy. He didn't name it, but he could demonstrate for us what that force might bring to a person's playing. So he would play, and he played timpani, powerful instrument. He was the timpanist of the New York Philharmonic.
What is a timpani? What is that?
The kettle drums.
Kettle drums,
and,
okay, gotcha. Okay.
And so he was a master, and he would play the great orchestral repertoire for us, and we'd be there with our mouths hanging open. and then you graduate, and you've had this wonderful education, and for me what that meant was practicing and trying to figure out how to bring to life all the information that was given to me when I was in the conservatory. And so part of that journey was the spiritual journey of defining what that force was in my life, and coming to know God through trying to perform and be the very best I could be in a business that expects perfection as the norm. I quickly realized that I didn't have a hope on my own of achieving that without God's grace. And I have a journey that led me towards God through wanting to honor this art form and try to honor my talent. Yeah. Trying to honor that. And eventually it would lead me to being able to go to Carnegie Hall and look up at this great sacred space, if you will, and start to think of it as though I was going to temple, as though I was going to a house of God where I might routinely expect to encounter God's presence through these performances, through the chemistry of great artists bringing their very best to the moment through the inspiration of great conductors, pulling us together that are trying to bring revelation into our lives, and it just inspired me to go deeper and want to do more.
I think as you said that, I'm thinking each of us is trying as best we can to express the God reality of the gift of each of us that we have. So I do a television
Yes.
show, and hoping that does it. But you preach a sermon, you write a book, you build a building. Somehow there's this desire to express God in our. Are you with me on this?
Absolutely.
We're all
Absolutely.
trying somehow to do that. We might be a politician, we might be a hairdresser, we might dig a ditch.
Right.
But if we do it well, and I love what you said about, what was the name of the professor that you had?
Mr. Goodman, Saul Goodman.
Saul Goodman.
Yeah.
Getting in touch with the truth of who we are, and allowing that truth to be able to be expressed, whether it's digging a ditch or doing a hairdo or playing a jazz composition. That's what we're all about, you know? Or making a marriage work.
Yes.
You know, and creating a family. Whoa, you know? Gosh, that gets me excited.
Well, and it gets me very excited because I realize what I skipped is that whole period kind of fueled on self-will, on believing I had to make it happen,
yes.
on the desire of if I could only meet this person and be in this situation, everything would come together just right.
Yes.
And as soon as I stepped out of self-will and tried to align myself or tried to discover what God's will might be, or even become aware at the very basic stage of becoming aware that God could have a will and will for me in God's life.
And this isn't necessarily what you're going to do. It's kind of surrendering to allowing God to open the doors. And then maybe you the courage to walk through the doors.
Right, and that's very much how I became a priest.
Tell me about that. Tell me, how did this happen? No, so the Juilliard was, how old were you when you finished Juilliard?
I finished Juilliard in 1975 with a master's, and so I was 23.
And then you started moving into these places where the Carnegie Hall and other experiences of what you happened.
I actually started to play with the New York Philharmonic. I started to stand alongside my mentors and teachers and played with them about 14
and what do you
weeks
play?
a year.
What do you
I play percussion and timpani.
Do you really?
And so I had a chance to record and perform and tour with Leonard Bernstein and
Did you really?
Zubin Mehta,
Oh.
and just wonderful, amazing experiences. And great experience with Oliver Messiaen, who's a great Roman Catholic mystic, composer who wrote magnificent works for full orchestra, and also his great organ works as well. But yeah, I can't begin to believe that I've had a chance to do that.
Okay, how did the priesthood enter in? How did that happen?
I was teaching at a conservatory in New York, Mannes College of Music, part of the New School for Social Research. I was thinking about going back to school to get a doctorate in music because I was just loving teaching, loving the relationships with the students.
And doctorate would open up doors for you. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And prayer and meditation were a huge part of my life. And being aware of how Jesus had touched my life in the kind of the healing with the sense of freedom that was coming into my life. Some things that friends were telling me about ways that I had maybe been able to share my experience that had touched them. And I had the notion in my prayer and meditation that I really wanted to study theology. I was really much more interested in body, mind, and spirit, and those pieces and how they had worked in my life.
Gotcha.
And so I started just praying and meditating, and the notion came to me, be a priest. And
Hello.
I don't know, and yeah. And of course, you know, I'm married. I've been married for 28 years, and as Episcopalian, that wasn't odd. But as someone who had to tell their wife for the first time that I was thinking of becoming a priest. You know that expression about a person's jaw dropping? I saw it hit the floor. And it was like giving birth. It was, as it takes 9 months for a child to develop, it took months and years to develop in my own formation. And so I just followed the opening door, as you suggested.
Yes, yes, yes.
And where people said, well, we're not so sure if we're really looking for priests right now, but if you're serious, go speak to this person. And other doors would open. And then I had to hit that crossroads where I thought I might have to stop playing music.
Ooh, hello.
And I thought that was a formation moment. I thought that was, I thought that I had to at least, I didn't want to be like the rich young man. I didn't want to be someone who was invited into Jesus' life and turned away.
Yes.
I didn't want to come up at the end of my life with a whole bunch of what ifs and sitting on the porch saying, what if I had followed?
We're going to take a break right now. I'm going to be right back, but I want to hear some of the practical aspects of what does it mean to be a man of God, but at the same time a man completely committed to the using music as an expression. Stay tuned. We've got some real interesting questions to come with. I am very excited to tell you that I have written a book, and I want you to be able to read it. It's a book that's called 15 Faces of God. It's a quest to know God through the parables of Jesus. I've labored with this book for a long time, and it's been a real labor of love because I feel that through this insight into the parables, we are opening up a wonderful insight into God. Now, I believe that Jesus was continually giving parables. They were ways of his getting out to many people, not just the people that went to synagogue and religious people. But parables were allowing him to get to the vast audience. And I couple that with the reality of how deeply Jesus loved his Father. We read in the Gospel of John time and again, oh, I come to do the Father's will. And when they asked him how to pray, it wasn't, pray the name of Jesus. No, my Father. And what I've done is I've taken 15 of these marvelous parables, some maybe those that you hadn't heard too much about, and I allow us to open up the door of an understanding of who just God is. Some of the insights into God: searching, humble, giving, celebrating, loving, authentic, generous, trusting, and even optimistic. Please, for your gift and donation to the ministry of $20 or more, I would love to send you this book. And not only are the lessons there, but there's a chance for you to have deep discussions because of questions that I presented. Remember, 15 Faces of God. Tell me a little bit about how you started to move with your priesthood into this world of music as a way of allowing your priesthood and your love of God to be expressed to other people.
When I was in seminary, I served in a field placement at a church that provided me with opportunities to kind of explore my growing edges, which means I was able to kind of fumble around and try to see how I might use my gifts in the world. And so the rector graciously allowed me to preach maybe once a month, maybe a little bit longer than that. And I came up with the idea of playing a little musical meditation.
I love it, I love it.
When I finished preaching. Because I had no idea if my words were worthwhile, but I figured, you know, I'm a pretty good musician. I think I could play something they would like to hear, and then maybe give them a chance to reflect, whether it's to reflect on the gospel or,
Gotcha.
or reflect something I shared.
Gotcha.
And that became really popular. folks like that.
Of course they did. Of course they did.
It's really wonderful.
So what would you do? You'd kind of read the gospel and give a thought, and then all of a sudden just kind of pull up the keyboard and...
Yeah, try to graciously, comfortably step over to the instrument and play something for 2 minutes, just a little, based on a hymn, usually, or something to say, and just let it kind of wash over the congregation.
That's a great idea.
People have been moved by it, and I've experimented with pulling it out of my routine, because I'm aware that musical taste, everyone's taste may be a little bit different, and I don't want to impose my my way of playing on people if it doesn't speak to them. So I'll pull it out for a while, and so my experience has been people ask, why aren't you playing? And my best answer nowadays is I'm not playing because I haven't had enough time to practice. I've been kind of busy with some of my other responsibilities as a priest. But they like that a lot. And then when I was in seminary, I also had the opportunity to write a paper for a liturgics class, and I chose to write about jazz vespers. And there's a wonderful...
Tell us, what are vespers? What does that mean?
Vespers is the monastic service that one would say at the rising of the Vesper Light as an evening prayer.
So like a whole bunch of monks would get together and every evening and they'd say the prayers, and they'd probably sing some songs too and things like that. Okay, that's what, I'm sorry, I just wanted to make sure we understood what that was about.
Absolutely. And
so you wrote that paper.
I wrote that paper and envisioned it kind of shaped after some other churches that I had studied. And finally, when I was called to St. Paul's Church in Riverside, Connecticut, I had an opportunity to bring that paper to life through a church service.
Was it an alive community?
It was a live community. It was on All Saints Sunday, so it was kind of a fun day to explore something different. And it was very, very well received. It was a very supportive community of a young or new clergy person who was recently ordained.
Hippie priest coming in.
They were very supportive. And it caught on, people loved it, and I think part of what made it very special was I brought the very best musicians on board that I could possibly bring and gather, and so that one experiences a level of playing that you would think that you would have to go to a smoky jazz club and in the best neighborhood and spend a fortune, but that's not the case. And the musicians love it because they're touched by the community. Very often when you reach a certain level of excellence, you go in and out the stage door and you don't get to touch people like you used to touch them. And also they had a chance to kind of reflect on what was happening. Jazz is a perfect vehicle to be able to respond to the spirit, and that breath, that pneuma that sweeps through a community also sweeps through the ensemble at the same time. And we would say the place where we might have a confession, we started playing the jazz standard "All of Me." All of me. Why not take all of me? Can't you see I'm no good without you? We would start to play around where we would do the Magnificat.
Norm, I love it.
Oh, we would do the Magnificat and we would play the Bach Gounod, Ave Maria. And then when we would take a collection, because that is something they teach you in seminary, we started playing Pennies from Heaven.
I love it. I love it.
It's great. It's just terrific. And it feeds a community.
Pennies from heaven. Hopefully not just pennies, but anyway.
Don't take this literal. Please. But it's a wonderful way of receiving people, too, and they feel welcomed.
Norm, that's wonderful.
It's been great.
Wonderful. Tell me, what's the difference between jazz and classical music and pop? What characteristic does that have that might be more conducive to some of the things that you're looking for with your vespers?
Well, jazz has that inherent improvised aspect to it. So one plays the statement or plays the song and then one develops it. So you have the exposition and development. In the instance of classical music, we have that.
Explain that again. Exposition and development.
We play the melody, which I would probably say is the exposition.
Da 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 da. All of me. Okay, boom.
Yeah.
But then.
Ba da da da, ba da da da, ba ba da da da. So then one would improvise on the melody or the chord structure, and when one is doing it authentically, one is inspired by the people with whom they're playing. They're inspired by the setting.
And the response of the people as they're they're breathing and reacting and smiling and even making noises.
Right. Whereas classical music, of course, is thorough composed. They have the statement of the theme, and then they develop that theme. That development is thoroughly composed, and so it's not in the moment as jazz is.
And what's interesting about jazz, I love jazz.
Yeah.
I'm that, and I'm actually. My favorite part of jazz are the standards, you know, some of the Ella Fitzgerald and Mel Torme and whatnot, and that's what I put on my Pandora, you know, and that I listen to and that. But you know what's interesting about jazz is that each time it's played, it's a brand new composition. It's a creation that's never been heard before. Are you with me on that?
Yes. Yes.
And I wonder sometimes, I wanted to just throw this in, that I've said that I think in many ways God is like a jazz musician, that he loves us deeply, and he has a vision for us of what he wants us to be. You know, he dreams of that. And yet with our freedom, sometimes we go down this road or that road, which deviates from what his dream of us is. But he can take even the sour notes that we play in our life, which might even be like a sour note in a jazz composition where, that's a neat idea. Let's go down that road for a new way. And God can take even our sinfulness and our brokenness and allow us, like a jazz musician, to create something very beautiful and rich and great, you know. So I wanted to get that little thing in there in terms of my love of jazz and my relationship with God, of really being a jazz player in many ways, without being disrespectful. I'm not trying to you know, this, but that concept of creativity and blessing is something very beautiful for God to have that relationship with us.
I've also discovered, if I might amplify that, just in my own experience, I've had to become schooled in the art of improvisation. And so I practice every day. Part of my rule of life is to practice music and to try to grow in that. And so and there's an inherent language and vocabulary. And so it's been important for me to expand my knowledge of that language and vocabulary.
What do you mean by that? I don't know. What do you mean a language? You mean improvisation language? What does that mean?
Yeah, I think scale structures, understanding some of the theory, being able to then get so comfortable that you can live outside of that. And I made a decision last May that I would commit myself to playing every single day, as long as I can, and see what happens, and see what happens. And I think, you know, in a way, my own spiritual journey has been like that. There've been times when I've been all in, and I've been deeply committed to reading the Word and following the path of those that have come before me, and then trying to live that out each day. Like you said, there are days I get off the path, but I'm called back to it. In a way, as you said before, the way the melody calls us back to the shape and to the form of the composition.
And God can even be delighted with those transformations and deviations and whatnot, and because he can see something with his creativity that's so fresh.
I love it.
We have to come back just a moment. We've got a break, but let's come back and let's pray with some people, if you will. We got a lot of letters and people, and so stay tuned, will you? And we'd like to pray with you. And you've just heard a beautiful priest share the presence of God through music. Let the music of prayer reach into your life just now. So stay tuned, please. I am delighted to tell you that I've written a book, and I'd love for you to get it and read it and be blessed. I've worked on this book for many years, and I believe that if you read it, your relationship with God is going to grow very, very deep. It can be a blessing. It's called 15 Faces of God. What I've done is I've taken 15 of Jesus' parables and allowed those parables to be a door that opens to us through Jesus into who God the Father is. Oh, you're going to be really shocked in many ways, but also blessed by the insight of God as a searcher, as an optimist, as a lover. Please, for your gift of $20 or more, I would love to send you this powerful book. Remember, 15 Faces of God. I want you to be blessed. One time I was talking with a priest friend of mine who was a great author. He was a novelist, and just great talent. And he was older. And I asked him a simple question. I said, do you think it's possible for me to pray by writing? You know, even doing meditation, and without a beat. He can, of course. And I'm reflecting on that with regard to what you're talking about with your involvement of music, that each of us needs to be able to pray, and it isn't necessarily has to be the church prayer or the book prayer that we come with, but maybe being in touch with the gifts that God has given us, and that can be a beautiful form of prayer. If it's writing, if I'm inclined to do that, or you're able to use it with music, it can be a beautiful way of communicating with God. Are you with me on that?
I am, yeah.
Communicating with God is also a beauty of people writing out to us. We get letters from all over. Samuel from Arizona, he wants to pray for his marriage. Kimberly has just died, a young girl, a friend of one of our benefactors. Percy from Connecticut, terrible headaches. Freddie from Georgia, his marriage with Jill, and asking for prayers with that. A husband from California in Anaheim asking for a problem with asthma. A whole bunch of just people praying, needing help. Lord, come into their lives. We've heard the beauty of your gift of music as a way of your expressing love for us and our expressing our love to you. Would you bring that love into all of these people's lives? Change them with the embrace of your gifts and your love and your creativity. May Jesus' love for you always make you smile. Norm, God bless you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful job.